Notre Dame versus Ohio State in the national championship game is just a few days away. And to get a national perspective, got JD Pickell, who does an incredible job at the On3 YouTube channel to break things down from his perspective. Folks, please hit the thumbs up on this video before we dive into it. Subscribe to the Blue and Gold YouTube channel if you're more here. Head over to blueandgold.com for so much more coverage of your Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So JD, Notre Dame and Ohio State, you've been talking about these two teams all year. I know you've been hyping up Jeremiah Love, it seems like, for 2 years at this point. How did these two teams get here? There's a lot of different ways you could take this, but different paths for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because in the old format of the college football playoff, both these teams, you could make a case for Notre Dame maybe still finding a backdoor path into this tournament with 4 teams, but like for the most part, we probably would have written the obituary for both these teams. Definitely Ohio State after Michigan and potentially Notre Dame after NIU. And so the thing that I've been pretty adamant that I love the 4-team model. I don't think we needed to change it all that much. One of the major benefits of expanding to me has been allowing these teams a little bit of runway. Like Ohio State, what they were back in September is very obviously a different thing than what they have been in this playoff. And same thing for Notre Dame, what they were post NIU and what they were pre NIU even in week 2, and how they've had the best margin of victory in all of college football through the regular season. Like both teams kind of catching their stride. And one more thought I have on this too is both teams kind of have a different team of destiny feel to them, which is bizarre to say for 2 teams. But Ohio State, Jack Sawyer strip sack, 80 yards. You're like, man, might just be the Buckeyes' year. Christian Gray gets a pick in the Orange Bowl to turn it over to set up a game-winning field goal. You're like, I don't know, man. That might just be that year for the Irish. So there's a lot there, but those are just some of the early thoughts I had on this thing.
Okay, so let's do a little breakdown here of the matchup. Ohio State, what do they, if you're an Ohio State fan, what do you need to be concerned about when it comes to Notre Dame? Where might Notre Dame have the edge on the Buckeyes, if anywhere?
Yeah, I think it's funny you asked that. I think the overall approach from Notre Dame is going to be a different, it sounds cliche, it's kind of unquantifiable, but just the intensity at which Notre Dame is going to play within the trenches. Not that Ohio State hasn't played good teams up front. I mean, obviously they've done that throughout their Big Ten play, but Notre Dame, it's tough to make an explanation for. But they are just one of those teams. I mean, you know this very well, Mike. It's going to take all 4 quarters to beat Notre Dame. That spread came out at 9.5 down to 8.5. And I'm like, I don't. That's a big margin for what I've seen this Notre Dame team be, especially throughout this playoff. So I think the physicality of Notre Dame, as funny as it is to say out loud with how dinged up they are up front, they're going to make a point to, I think, commit to the run game. I think they'll do a lot of that, the pulling of the guards and the pulling of the tackles, like kind of we saw in that first drive against Penn State in the second half. So I'm juiced for it, but I think the physicality of Notre Dame up front will be a massive factor that Ohio State has got to deal with.
All right, and then flipping it, what do Notre Dame fans, with that Notre Dame staff, what do they need to be worried about with the Ohio State team?
I don't know if you feel the same way, Mike, but watching the first half of the Penn State game, where Nick Singleton and Katron Allen had a lot of success on the perimeter run game, that to me makes me a little bit nervous for Notre Dame, because they definitely cleaned it up in the second half and started to trigger much more quickly from that second and third level of the defense. But I wonder how much you have to commit to stop a Henderson and a Judkins to then sacrifice something on the back end and have a Jeremiah Smith get loose. So the Texas blueprint to me is super fascinating if I'm a Notre Dame fan. But yeah, I mean, the defending the perimeter run and getting those backs on the ground in space has got to be, priority number 1, 2, and 3 if you're putting together the game plan.
So what did Texas and from your vantage point, what did Texas and Michigan really do to limit the Ohio State offense?
Yeah, Texas did a great job in that front 7. They did a great job, getting pressure with 4, and this isn't speaking to the running back so much, but just what that front was able to do, they didn't have to add a ton of extra resources on the back end. They were able to play fairly honest up front. You had Colin Simmons getting off the edge, elite true freshman edge defender for Texas. You need your big boys up front to win at the point of attack and to not have to add in Xavier. You don't want Xavier Watts having double-digit tackles in this game, because that means it got to the third level.
I'm curious for your take on this. When you watch that Ohio State-Texas game, JD, did you leave that thinking, oh, man, that's a beatable team? What we saw, because they just rolled Tennessee and Oregon. You're like, dang, this is a completely different team that you saw against Michigan. This team's now rolling. Did you leave that watching that Ohio State-Texas game thinking, oh, man, Ohio State is beatable? That's a reminder? Or did you think, damn, like they played poorly and still won by 2 touchdowns against a really good Texas team. I've asked a lot of people this question this week. Where do you land?
I probably fall towards the latter, to be honest. I think if Ohio State had rolled in 40-piece Texas and blown the doors off them, I think that almost in some ways makes them more gettable. To have that hiccup, you would hope almost like get right spot if you're an Ohio State fan, which I understand that's not the audience here, but that to me is a little bit of a sign of maybe uneasiness if I'm a Notre Dame fan watching Ohio State do what they did. So I mean, if you're a Notre Dame fan, obviously you see that and you're like, hey, that we can run the football better than Texas did probably. We feel great about our physicality up front, which could end up being the difference. But yeah, that seeing Ohio State not score 40, not have all the success through the air with Jeremiah Smith, and still be able to win by 2 touchdowns makes me a little nervous.
All right, we'll get to your prediction in a second, but I'm curious, and you touched on this a little bit, but your thoughts on this first 12-team playoff, and keeping in mind it's what's supposed to be going to 14 or whatever, something soon.
Who knows, dude? Who knows
So,
how many to go to?
dude, college football so much is like, man, there's no putting the toothpaste back into the tube, man. The whole thing is bananas. It's like, oh, transfer portal window changes. It's great for us in the media. We always have things to talk about and write about, but it is just it's a lot different of a sport than when we were growing up, JD, 20 years ago when we were getting into college football. Like it's a completely different world. But I mean, Notre Dame and Ohio State, like they deserve to be here. They deserve to be in the playoffs. They deserve to be where they're at right now. And it's been a very entertaining product for sure.
I'm all over the place with it because to one extent, I'm like the regular season, however we slice it, has been watered down. Like it has been devalued to some extent. Now the realignment of this whole thing, getting Oregon and Ohio State playing, getting Texas and Georgia playing, like the product itself has been so awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to complain as a fan. But if I'm going to be a super, fabric of the sport guy here, there is a part of me that's like, man, I would have loved to see the regular season game against, Michigan if I'm Ohio State. I would love to see that matter as much as possible. That's not me saying I don't think Ohio State should still be in the playoff or any of that, because obviously they're on the precipice of doing something exciting here in this national title game. But I love the product. I don't like the change, but I am on board with college football. If I'm speaking out of like every side of my mouth right now with how I'm answering this question, but like that's kind of where we're at right now, Yeah,
it's definitely a double-edged sword where it's like, man, I am still enjoying this 100%. Like
yes.
I am enjoying the amount of games that now matter, right? Because there's more games that matter. But yes, you very much you could lose to Michigan or you can lose to NIU, and it doesn't matter as much anymore.
Yeah.
Like, so
yeah.
You're totally fine talking out of both sides of your mouth there, because I think it's a very fair thing to do, and I've done it all year. Prediction for this game.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I wanted to say one more thing on the. I know we're rolling here, but one more thing on the playoff thought. The thing I do appreciate is we spoke about like the runway and all that. I think this new playoff format emphasizes more than ever coaching and culture. Like if you can't bounce back from an NIU loss, can't bounce back from a Michigan loss, like brother, mail it in. And that's something that everyone is saying is like dying in college football with the portal and NIL. Culture doesn't matter. Character is this, it's that. And it's like these two teams have shown a lot of resilience, and I value that a lot because I think that is one of the key benefits of playing football at any level, is being able to get punched in the mouth and stand up. So I love that part of it. But you had a question about
what's the prediction? Who you got?
This is not going to be popular on the board here, but I've seen too much from Ohio State, and quite frankly feel too nervous about the Ohio State the Notre Dame injuries, rather, I guess, with the matchups against Ohio State. That makes me really nervous with this Ohio State ground game. So I'll take Ohio State to win. I'm not going to take them to cover. I think Notre Dame is just too gritty. I think they'll sign up for a street fight and make it a phenomenal battle for us all to watch. But I do think Ohio State gets it done. I have it 34-26 is my final. 34 would be a lot. I totally understand that for Ohio State, but I think they end up finding a way with that ground attack.
Irish fans, ignore what he just said and hit the thumbs up on this video, because I know you liked the video up to this point. Or if you didn't like any of it, just support what we're doing here at Blue and Gold. We'd appreciate it. JD, appreciate your time, folks. Again, hit the thumbs up if you have not done so yet, and we'll catch you next time.